Hey everyone, it's Janice from the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm excited to tell you that my book is now for sale. It's called Divorcing Religion, a memoir and survival handbook, and I'll make sure you have a link in the notes for that. And also I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and become a member of my YouTube channel. Take care. Hey everyone, welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. I do want to offer a content warning today. We are talking about abuse that occurred that was perpetrated against a woman. So I just want you to know that off the bat. Karrah Youngblood is my guest today. Karrah is a professional artist, single mom, and unexpected memoirist from Oklahoma. She never planned to be an activist, but standing up to the man who hurt her and so many others turned into a fight she couldn't walk away from. Karrah is now telling her story, the story of what happens when one woman refuses to stay silent despite having every reason to. Wildfire, a memoir, is about how Karrah Youngblood stood up to one of the most documented predators in modern history and to the systemic injustice that protected him at every turn. In Karrah's own words, my art has been featured by NPR, TMZ, and Comic-Con, but Wildfire is the creation I'm most proud of. Telling my story seemed like the obvious thing to do since a serial predator tried so hard to stop it. Writing and publishing Wildfire feels like the closest form of justice I will ever receive. I wrote it to reclaim my voice and to help others find theirs. Karrah, it's an honor to have you on the Divorcing Religion podcast. Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I can't believe that was me. You were just describing it. Still seems so weird. I'm like,
it's amazing.
Yeah, that was me.
You've been through an awful lot. Now, I'll start out by asking you the question that I asked my guests. Did religion play any role in your life?
Religion definitely played a role in my life growing up in Oklahoma. It was the thing to do on Sundays with your cousins. That's what we did. We went to church and made fun of the bad singers and played hangman on the church brochure pamphlet for the week, but it was just instilled in us that we go to church on Sundays. I felt lucky because I didn't have a mom that made me go on Wednesday nights too, so
Right.
I at least had a more forward thinking church family in Oklahoma. But my mom was always my mom wouldn't go to church sometimes. She would send me with my cousins, but my mom wouldn't go. So I thought that was always kind of funny. And when I met this guy that I'm getting ready to go into the story about, one of the things that I thought made him decent was because he was like a deacon in a church,
Oh, no.
And so me, Oklahoma girl, I'm like, oh, well, he can't be a bad guy, and definitely there was one time when I was reporting a protective order violation, and this was when I had my big wake up call. I was reporting a protective order violation. They were threatening to bury my body with a backhoe and dig my grave and put me in it. And so I go to the police to report that there's somebody planning to murder me online. And they were like, well, they're not being serious. They didn't take what I was saying serious. And, I felt like they weren't going to take me serious unless somebody actually showed up with a shovel. And I will never forget, they dismissed me, but the officer that took that I was talking to gave me his business card. And I remember on the back of that business card was some biblical quote that
brother.
And I just remember looking at it, and I wish I knew which one it was to this day, but I just said, do you live by this? Do you honestly think you're living by this? And that was the day I'm just like, no, I can see through your religious scam. It's just, it's so gross. And, I feel like I would take it. now, with that being said, I think people should strive to be like Jesus. Like, I feel like people, if they're going to preach Christianity, then okay, then let's feed everyone. Let's
Mhm.
give everybody health care. Let's
Yeah.
love every single person equally. And,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
but they just don't live by that. So it's really hard for me to take it seriously.
Right. Yes. And we know that misogyny is baked right into patriarchy. And
Absolutely.
I've never been to Oklahoma, but when I think of it, I think of it
Don't.
as rather a place where patriarchy and misogyny are a pretty big deal. So tell us then, set the stage for us. Um, how did you meet this person? And I mean, at first he must have seemed pretty good, and then things obviously just got worse from there to the point where you were stripped of your First Amendment rights in the United States. So please get us going on that story and how it all came about.
Well, he found me on Facebook. I feel like I have to start out by saying I'm also a professional pumpkin carver, and I know that's a weird thing, but it actually is a thing.
So
And
fun.
I like there's been stories about me by NPR, and I actually was hired to carve William Shatner for William Shatner. So I mean, yeah. So I've had some really cool deals with the whole pumpkin thing. So the monster actually found me on Facebook and pretended to be kind of interested in my pumpkins, and we kind of started talking from there. And he just really put on the charm quick, and he was a powerful businessman. He had an airplane. He had a baby with country music Sarah Evans. And so I'm thinking, well, he's not that attractive, but if country music singer Sarah Evans is having a baby with him, and she was really popular at the time. And so I was like, wow, he must be something kind of cool. And so our first date was going to be a weekend away out of state. And the for
Hmm.
our first date, we drove to a place called Branson, Missouri, which is a couple 100 miles away. And on all the way there, he talked about his ex-wife that was suing him for child support, and then another ex-wife that was just obsessed with him. But not to worry, they wouldn't be a problem. Don't they're not.
Wow. Some
They're
red flags already going up there. Yeah.
I
Mm.
ignored so many red flags in the short time I was with him. And luckily that wasn't very long. But so our first date, he ended up just spanking me on the butt really hard. And then he hit me with his
Mhm.
belt on the butt really hard. And I
Oh dear.
cried. I cried, and
Yeah.
I'm 200 miles from home. Nobody knows the guy that I'm
Yes.
with, and
Right.
my kid was at her dad's for the weekend, and so and I remember coming out of the bathroom and crying, and he was like, "Don't be crazy. I didn't hurt you that bad." And so immediately after that happened, I did start to question my own, like, okay, is my blood sugar just low? It really didn't
Right.
hurt that bad,
Hmm.
and so I kind of just pretended like it didn't happen. I unfortunately, which is sad to think about. But so eventually, so we end up this first date ends up being a full weekend. We end up back at my mom's house. He meets my parents. It was just
Wow.
a nuts thing. Like we visited
Hmm.
his sister's grave. Um, and
Very intense.
very intense because he got really good at the apologizing, and I'd forgotten that he had hit me on the butt. I'd forgotten. I didn't. It wasn't so bad because he was on this apology tour, and we were really having a fun kind of time, and he was showing me all these places that he went to he liked to go to, and we just went for like a long road trip. And and the second weekend I was with him, that was when he definitely ruined my 36th birthday. That was
Hmm.
he raped me on my birthday.
Hmm.
And That wasn't very fun.
Of course. Oh,
But
that's
I mean,
terrible.
but I remember coming home from his house and like crying in the shower and doing the thing girls do in movies, when you can't get can't scrub
Right.
the filth off,
Yeah.
and that's when I learned like why women, you always hear women go back to their abusers, and I learned that week why they do. And unfortunately, that was not the last date that I had with Jason Lewis. And so the third and final weekend I was with him, we ended up going for a long drive. Like he always wanted to go for long drives. He called it dirt road therapy or booze cruising, because he always drank a lot when he went, and I would drive. And um, we were driving around this road that was called Boston Pool Road, and he was drinking, and I realized that was when I realized the moment I need to get this guy out of my car. What am I doing with him? And
Yes.
I said, okay, I'm taking you home. And that's when he threw a fit. He pulled a gun to me, choked me with my seatbelt. I was still going to get home. I was still going to get home. And so
Wow.
it was about a 45-mile drive of him just throwing a tantrum and screaming and yelling. And I kept thinking, well, he can't hurt me. I'm driving the car he's in, and he also told me he was going to kidnap me. He told me he was going to leave me in a field and no one would know where I was. And
My
so
gosh.
I just remember thinking, you can't kidnap me. I'm driving. And I smarted off to him. That was when I learned the absolute batshit crazy in this man, when I was driving 55 miles an hour down a major highway in the dark, and he punched me in the side of my face like a hammer. Like I
Oh
just
my gosh.
dead clocked me on the side of the face. And um, I I didn't swerve. I don't know how. I have no idea how I kept my cool in that situation. But I knew immediately I was going to have to go to the police. And I said that I said I'm going to the police, and then he said, no, I will kill your kid if you tell the police. If
Oh
I tell the
my
if I tell the
gosh.
police what he did to me, then he would lose custody of his kids, and it's an eye for an eye. So
Whoa.
so he was threatening to kill my only
Terrifying. Wow.
yeah, he was threatening to kill my only kid. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm not telling anyone, I guess this stays with me. So, and then, and one more thing to add to this before we go. There was one woman that had reached out to me after our first date named Kristen, who had said, you're with my boyfriend. And I'm like, he's not your boyfriend, you crazy cow. He's my boyfriend. And I had never even heard of her, but he talked her away as being some crazy delusional girl that just was obsessed with him. So he really did a good job of pitting women against each other, and bringing out the competitor in us, And so fast forward. Oh, sorry, I have a cat coming through.
It's okay. We don't mind.
Okay. So after so
So she
after
contacted you.
after I dropped Jason Lewis off at his house that night, after he punched me in the face and threatened to kill my kid, that was the last time I saw him outside of a courtroom. And that was for 3 weeks in 2014. So 6 months later, I was contacted by Kristen again. She had unblocked me, and she reached out to me and said, I got brave. And he pretty much had trained me to hate her and not trust her, but for some reason I knew to believe what she said. And
Mhm.
I said, you got brave. And she basically explained that he had like beaten her in his mom's driveway the night before and was arrested. Only served a couple of hours in jail, but he was at least arrested for beating her. And that's when I said, he hit me too. And it just like came out, he hit me
Wow.
too. Um, and so we also found out that same week, he also beat his ex-wife, another ex-wife, Sharon. And so within that same week, he beat two women. And I thought, oh God. And when I say he was beating her, he was having her prep her own body for her own autopsy. He had her, yeah, he was having her, he was told her he was going to shoot her where the bruises are so they wouldn't be able to pick it up. And keep in mind, I've left this part of the story out so far. His he was so charming in the beginning because he um he said had all these things, like had the baby with Sarah Evans, was an attorney, he was an attorney, had a pilot's license, had an airplane, just and did all these million dollar business deals. And so you just thought he was like something kind of special. And
Mhm.
turns out he just wasn't. I kind of got I got
Were
sidetracked.
those things true? Those things about him? Was he a lawyer and all these different things?
None of the things were true. But one thing the only thing that was true was that he was a mortician. He has a yes, he and so imagine my surprise when I find out he embalmed his own sister. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So he's
oh my
kind of,
gosh.
yeah. So we're kind of a very sick man. But and he claimed to be a lawyer. And one thing that he had was this assistant. He had this really beautiful assistant named Vicky, who he connected me with right when we first met, and she was beautiful. He had actually bought her a Corvette before. He bought her a puppy before, and you always kind of wondered if they were kind of seeing each other too, and she had thousands of followers on LinkedIn, men just fawning over her. Turns out it was him. He was the fake girl, like just
Wow.
just to make people
Yeah.
jealous. Yeah.
Oh, oh my
And
gosh.
so Kristen and Sharon are the two women that he beat that same week. And so
Mm.
I I immediately connected with them and immediately bonded with them because we'd all kind of been through the same thing by the same
Yeah.
man. And that's when I was like, oh, I started to take the blame for their being hurt because I felt like, well, because I didn't come forward, then it just let him go on to hurt other women, right? And I kind of felt a little bit responsible for him hurting them because I didn't say anything. And so
Of course,
I
we
knew,
know the truth is he is 100% responsible for
oh,
every
I
person that
know.
he
I trust
hurts.
I
Yes.
have learned that, but
Yeah.
it was, but I knew I had to tell the police.
Yeah.
And so I did. And me and Kristen actually went with me and filed my first police report ever in my life. I was in my mid 30s. Um, and I was expecting, we'll bring him in right away, ma'am. And
Hmm.
it just didn't happen. And he got a lawyer and they never brought him in for questioning. And yeah, and I filled in horrible details of on my police report, it just gross
Yeah.
details. and
Right.
and and so they didn't I found out they weren't going to bring him in for questioning. And right and we actually had a meeting with the district attorney's office, and they kind of gave us some hope that they were going to do something, because they were talking to the three women that he had beat within months of each other, and we found out that he'd actually beat four women the same month in October of that year. And so we were just trying to get anyone to stop him. And not just, I mean, I'm talking brutalizing them.
Yes.
It's not just a
Right.
black eye, and
Hmm.
not that a black eye is okay. I'm just saying
Right.
and so um the district attorney's office ended up calling us and telling us that there was nothing they could do. And a week after that, my mom died of early onset Alzheimer's.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
it's okay. I was just really at kind of the end of my rope, like
Yeah.
I was under a lot of pressure, and my mom died, um and so me and Kristen, and I'm a graphic designer. Kristen had already made a Word document that had a lot of his crimes on it, like current accusations. So I opened up my MacBook Pro and opened up Adobe InDesign, and I created a flyer based on all these accusations, and they were all documented accusations, and they were all current Oklahoma case numbers and Arkansas case numbers.
Okay.
One went back to 1997. I included that he had 4 protective orders. I think it was 4, and only 2 days of jail time served. And I put it like 8 different victims on the bottom of it that I knew of.
Wow.
I put
Mm-hmm.
black bars over their eyes, to protect their identity. Which,
Mm-hmm.
in retrospect, I wish I hadn't used their faces, but I needed people to see that he's like affecting some humans here. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're all normal looking people. Like, why is he
Mm-hmm.
allowed to do this, right? And so we 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 decided that we were going to make 250 color copies of this flyer. And we went to the Tulsa International Airport and we rented a Mustang because we didn't want to use either one of our cars. And we rented a Mustang, and it was a white Mustang, and we immediately named it Wildfire from the song Wildfire by Michael Martin Murphey, and the pony she named Wildfire busting down its stall, right? And so we named our pony Wildfire, and we just, because we were going to spread the truth like wildfire. And so we were being
Mm-hmm.
very cheesy, but we were being, we were kind of trying to stick up to this guy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so our mission was we were going to spread the truth like wildfire that day. And so we went to his hometown. We hung flyers in Walmart. We hung flyers in the feed store. We hung flyers at his
Oh
favorite
my.
restaurant, right next on the corkboard, right next to where it had like the fresh eggs for sale, and just pretty much. And we put one at the library with the police station, and so. And then at the end of the day, we drove around for a long time and put them many, many places. And one thing I actually, because I didn't want to be on security cameras, I actually was wearing like sunglasses and a hoodie and a ball cap. I looked like I was robbing a bank.
Right.
And so,
Mhm.
and so the end of the day, we had quite a few flyers left. And because it's kind of a small town, and we ended up standing on top of the golf course, which is on top of a hill. And we just threw our flyers, like we threw the rest of them,
Mhm.
we were like, okay, everyone's going to know that there is a monster walking their streets,
Mhm.
and immediately I felt so great. Like, I did something.
Mhm.
I wasn't quiet. I stood up to him, and I knew something was probably going to come of it, but I didn't know what. And that what actually, and Kristen was already kind of embroiled in a case against him, and so there was a lot of people already, and so she couldn't say she was driving that day. She couldn't say she was there because the judge already thought she was halfway crazy anyway. Um,
Mm.
and so I had to, and I was going to just deny, because he started accusing every woman on the flyer of doing it. And, and
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
think that through. I didn't think that through, that he would come after the other victims. And I just felt
Was this
horrible.
on social media? Like, how were you finding out that he was
Um,
doing this?
I was finding out because women were contacting me like, what did you do?
Mm.
What did you do? He's threatening to sue me, who did this? And that's when I knew, okay, I've got to say it was me. And so I got on Facebook and posted the flyer and said,
Mhm.
and I actually said, I lied at first and said that a women's rights group posted it, and which was technically not a lie, but it didn't hold. I ended up getting a lawsuit on April the 1st of 2016. I got a certified letter in the mail that was basically shut up. It was already a restraining order on my mouth that they were able to get in my absence. It was temporary, but it was a restraining order against my mouth and my flyer. And
So you couldn't talk about it. You couldn't say anything about him or what
I couldn't
he
say
did to
anything
you.
that I couldn't say anything that was on the flyer, which on the flyer was that he raped me, and so, and his name. And so because his name was on the flyer, I couldn't say his name either. And so then I think it was like a couple of months later, the judge actually, and okay, here's another thing. I was very much a single mom at the time, still am, and was working 2 jobs, and I couldn't afford like this high-powered attorney that I needed to defend me. And since it was a civil case, and I knew that I knew that the truth is protected by the First Amendment of the United States, and that I knew that my flyer was painfully, provably true, I represented myself. Trust me, I tried so hard to get an attorney. There was just nobody wanted to touch it, and I
Yeah.
understand that. I get it, and but I also was able. I had a couple of paralegal friends that were able to help me navigate, and I still had the truth with me. Thinking I had the sharpest weapon in the room. No, I didn't. And so they ended up issuing a full and gag order, past, permanent, and present. So anything I had to take down, anything I'd ever posted about him, couldn't say anything in the future about him, couldn't say anything now about him. And I continued to fight that. And this case went over a period. By then it had been about a year. So I had been completely legally muzzled for a year by the state of Oklahoma, not allowed to warn a woman about him. And he was actually, at this point, he had purchased a cattle brand and was branding his initials on women. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Torturing them and using dowel rods, battery clamps.
Oh my gosh.
Just
terrible.
horrifying things that, monster things, not a guy gets drunk and slaps his wife around even. And even that's not okay.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it's just sick things and methodical things and serial things. They were out there. All the women so far, we've all had our mouth fish hooked by him. Like that's just what he does. And like we all had the same experience with him, just different. I was lucky because I was with him the shortest amount of time. And I can truly say I was very lucky. I am definitely one of the lucky ones because he just really went on to monster. And so during this, so one day I'm at my office and I get a notification. Why were you not at court today? And I was like, there wasn't court today. I checked yesterday, and his lawyer actually had marked a date off and changed it. And because of that, I verified, and turns out they tricked me out of missing court. And because there was no one there to defend me, I lost by default. So I had completely lost my first, like I was not allowed to speak his name forever. Like that was pretty much. And so they were going. So then I thought, okay, I tried to file a motion to vacate that judgment, to turn it over. I went and had Judge Pickerel looked at me and said no. And so I lost again. And he said, but next time come back with an attorney before we determine your damages. So I was being forced to hire an attorney, someone I couldn't afford, so they could figure out how much money that I had to pay my abuser.
Wow, that is so outrageous.
Yeah. So
disgusting.
As he was just brutalizing other women. And by then he had wife number 4 who kept coming to court with him and like staring daggers across the aisle at me, and her family was the ones that were starting to talk about burying me with a backhoe and online they were kind of coming after my kid and body shaming my kid, my 9-year-old, real grown up things. And so, but I knew she was probably had a rough home life. I knew
Mhm.
he didn't just stop beating women, and I knew he
Right.
can't. And so I kind of didn't take her meanness personally. I knew
Right.
he was manipulating her. I knew he was pulling the strings. Um, I just kept waiting for her to eventually reach out and to know that I didn't stoop, to know that I didn't try to retaliate against her. And surely enough, he did. He was found. He was arrested in Iowa for beating her badly. Um,
Mm.
he ended up not having to go to prison, but he was forced to register as a sex offender then. And so that was at least a little win. I'm like, okay, well, good. The man that raped me is at least now up there with his name is next to Harvey Weinstein. Good. It deserves to
Mhm.
be. And um, so then, I was, my back was against the wall. I'd lost. I was trying to find an attorney that could help negotiate my damages. Another thing they were trying to get me to do was to take out a full page newspaper ad to apologize for my actions,
Oh
for
my God.
my crime of warning women that a abusive man is in fact abusive, and so I started a GoFundMe to help try to raise money for an attorney. Then they came after me and forced me to take that down because it was in violation of my gag order. And then a high school friend that I hadn't talked to in years, RJ, came through and said, "Karrah, I have a daughter, and women should not be punished for sticking up for each other." And he covered the rest of my retainer. And I still can't
Oh,
talk about that without crying.
wow. Wow.
That was
I'm
because that
so glad.
that was when that was when the power shift happened. That was the big
Wow.
moment that it became a power shift, right? I mean, it's palpable. You can almost see it. Um and I was able to hire a guy named Taylor Burke who, when I went to his office the first time, and he was like, "No, this is not right. This is they're in clear violation of your First Amendment rights. The their ruling was not an equitable, like it was not. It should have never been entered.
Right.
And so it took months still. Like he had to work for months on it. But finally, I think it was in June of 2017. They finally, Judge Pickerel had to go back on his judgment, and he issued a partial summary judgment, which lifted my gag order and allowed me to talk.
Oh my God. And so then what? There's still this serial predator is still out there, being a predator, abusing women. And so it's great that you got that gag order lifted because that whole thing was just atrocious. But then what happened?
Then one thing he did was make signs with my face on them. All so I had one day after court. I was at one of my mini court one of my mini court days. I stopped and got some weed on the way home, and I got pulled over and this was before it was legal in Oklahoma. Like it's completely legal in Oklahoma now. And I'm not much of a
Okay.
drinker. So,
Right.
so, I got arrested and I was in jail for 45 minutes for weed. And so I had now served more time in Creek County Jail than the guy who raped me. Um, but I always said if I had a mugshot, if I was gonna be in a mugshot, I was gonna smile big for it because I was gonna take advantage of that situation. I don't know why. I just I'm so I was in my 30s. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to jail. I don't know. Anyway, so I did smile real big, and I wasn't wearing like jail clothes. I didn't actually fully get processed, but
Right.
and so um he decided to take that mugshot, and he made signs with my face on them, 24-inch by 18-inch
Hmm.
coroplast signs, and posted them all around my hometown. with a note that said, "Know your neighbor." And keep in mind, I was teaching piano in town during this, and my kid went to school here. But they were just, everyone defended me. Like the strangers took the signs down with their own hands. My 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 there's another thing he did. I didn't, during this whole 441 days where I was not allowed to talk, he made signs with my face on them. And keep in mind, he was right by my kid's school, which he was not allowed within 1,000 feet from her. Because of I was able to finally get a protective order. And this is how I got a protective order against him. Because I was teaching piano at this little studio, and they got a note from him, directly from him, that I was a harm to small children, and that that children shouldn't be around me, and that if they want, unless they want him to tell everybody that they hire people that shouldn't be around children, then they should probably fire me. And
so he threatened them. Yeah,
pretty much. And but luckily my student count kept growing. The parents of my students defended me feverishly. And I was worried they were going to fire me. They were taking me to dinner. It was just awesome. And and then my kids' teachers were just, no, we know what's really going on. I mean, they knew, they knew. And
was the news covering this at all, Karrah?
No, what? I kept reaching out. That's one thing. And that's one thing that makes me so grateful for you, is because this just has not been a story. One more thing that he did to silence me, I feel like this kind of important, is he actually reported me for child neglect and tried to get my kid taken away from me.
Dear.
We had a knock on the door from the Department of Human Services to come and investigate me for child neglect. And this was another one that backfired on him, because me and my little neglected child were packing for the Bahamas. And we had flip-flops and stuff on our couch, and had to apologize to the lady for our vacation prep. And so she knew within 5 seconds my kid was not neglected. She was getting ready to go to Atlantis. And so that was, every time he tried to humiliate me or anything he ever did ended up always backfiring on him. And I'm really that's kept me going. It just that kept me going. So then everything kind of died down for a while. I became friends with a girl that was going to hurt me.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine now too. And she's since she's apologized, humbly, she would, and she meant it. And so I think people can grow and learn, and I love her to death. I think she's awesome. And so everything kind of calmed down there for a minute, and then in 2021, he beat his fifth wife, and didn't just beat her, he mangled her. Her ambulance picture is something that nobody should ever have to look at, much less live. She was just horrible. It's so gross. And
so were the police involved then when that happened?
She was able to call 911 from her Apple Watch and just say help. The word help was the only thing she could say. And so the police came, they arrested him then. And he was charged with 7 different things. And it was okay, now it's time. The hammer's fallen. He's, there was news articles then, of pictures of him in handcuffs, and just news porn to me, I'm like, oh yeah, And so, so we're okay, finally. And this Iowa prosecutor was like, no, he doesn't get to do this. And then they added an 8th charge, which turned out to be a hate crime against women, which was the first of its kind to be heard in a U.S. courtroom. And they were accusing him of being the serial abuser I had been saying he was for years.
Yes.
And so I was going to be testifying with my flyer, which was kind of cool. And
Mhm.
me and then another girl he beat in 1997 were all going to come testify in the hate crime trial. And we had our depositions, and his lawyer was deposing me, and trying to basically make him sound like he had never been a misogynistic a day of his life,
Right.
and and she didn't know that the flyer existed, and so she had to find out with quickness. I've been saying he's a serial abuser for a long time, and I've got printed proof, and so her game plan kind of changed that day, and they ended up pleading to lesser charges, so the hate crime case never went through, because by that point the girl that he beat so bad had gone back to him.
Oh
And
no.
and Stockholm syndrome runs really deep.
Yeah.
It's a really hard theme through this whole thing. He's
Yeah.
really good at
Yeah.
bringing that on. But the Iowa attorneys, they still went after him. Even though she was
Good.
changing her story, they still at least tried to get something against him. And so he got 10 years in prison in Iowa. Okay, great,
Wow.
right? We're all excited. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And was able to get away from him and divorce him, and she's now, I love her, she's now my friend.
Okay. Yeah.
She's safe and away from him and out of
Good.
his psychological warpath. He only served 13 months of that 10 years, and they let him out.
Unbelievable.
They let him out without telling any of us. We had no time to relocate, no time to, nothing.
Wow.
And so he's still free.
Oh, that's so aggravating. Now, tell me about the judge,
The
because this is
judge,
something people need to know about. And which judge? Was it the judge that ordered you muzzled so that you couldn't speak?
the Judge Patrick Pickerel is the guy that it was the judge in my case that issued the gag order, the unlawful gag order for 441 days, violating my First Amendment rights. And I've spent this whole time trying to stop this predator from hurting women, that I never stopped to be mad at the judge. And now I'm like, no, like, now I'm mad. And now I'm like, I feel like, and I don't know what's really guiding me right now, but I feel like someone needs to come after his job. And I feel like he needs to apologize to the women that were hurt because he wouldn't allow me to speak, and me.
And
He
what
can
has
apologize
happened
to
to
me.
him? Yes.
Nothing has happened to him.
I thought there was I thought one of the judges ended up being charged with
No, he was not. He was charged with perjury a year before my case. He was found working in connection with my abuser's attorney. And so it was kind of swayed his way in the first place, but no, nothing ever happened to the judge from that. No, his perjury case is a total unrelated case.
wow.
No, the
Oh
judge,
my God.
nothing has happened to the judge. Actually, nobody really knows it. Nobody, I mean, it's the Oklahoma. So after he got out of prison early, in 13 months, one of my piano students went on to become the executive director of the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. And they had a podcast that they did for the first season. They did was for a girl named April Wilkins. And the podcast was called Panic Button. But it was about this girl named April Wilkins who murdered her. She killed her rapist and was serving like decades in prison for it. And they were trying to get her out because, she killed her rapist. And so they dedicated the second season to my story. And so it was the first time that my story kind of came with some legal weight instead of shame, but it wasn't enough for people. I mean, a lot of people heard it, but I don't think enough people that can do anything, and so I so it felt really good. I felt like that was a really good happy ending for me, because it was like, okay, well, now you've done everything to keep me quiet, and now I've done a podcast, and it was good. It was more legal, though. It was a lot of the
Right.
legal stuff. So the storytelling is kind of dry, just because it's all
Right.
perfectly backed up by legal
Mhm.
documentation,
Yeah.
Um, but it was important, and it was enough to give me a little bit of weight behind my, to feel a little validated and heard,
Right.
um and to expose him a little. Um,
Right. And so then you've written the Wildfire book, your memoir. And so in that book, do you also name this judge that you just named? Because
I
if you
named the
don't, then
judge.
we'll
I
you
named the
name the
judge
judge.
in my
Okay.
book. He's
Okay.
in a position of power, and everything is backed up by legal documentation. Like, he can't undo what he did. It's a
Hmm.
forever record, and
Okay.
including the flyer itself. Trying to sue me to stop the flyer only made it permanent record. It's the
Right. Right. Yeah.
mhm.
And so do you have an order against him? So he's not allowed near you
I
and your
don't. I'm
child?
not. I don't. I can't get one. I
Wow.
can't. I can't get one. So, but so my, and I didn't even realize this was a part of the story, but like, I felt just I wrote my book, and I've been writing it for 4 years. I knew I was going to write it the day that I got gagged. Like, I knew eventually I knew they'd never shut me up forever. And I mean, I, I, and I never lost hope, really, either, just because I knew I wasn't going to give up, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so writing my book was very therapeutic, but it also made me mad at people that I hadn't been mad at yet. I'm able to kind of step back and see it from a broader picture,
Hmm.
and and but I didn't. And when I decided to self-publish, I got a yes from a couple of agents, but then I was just like, no, I have a really hard time um, being told what I can and can't say, kind of thing, these days, rightfully so. And so I'm like, I'm a graphic designer. I can kind of figure this out. I'll at least try to self-publish. And so I ended up self-publishing to every audiobook platform, to everywhere you can get books online. And I didn't realize, like, what a giant middle finger that was to all of them. Like, and I'm like, oh wow,
Hmm.
I feel great now. And I do. It's been so therapeutic, just being like, okay, well, you tried to shut me up. Well, guess what? You're on every audiobook platform now.
Wow. Yes. And so, as far as you go and your own mental health, have you connected with any like domestic violence support groups or people in your town, just so you don't feel like you're trying to do this all on your own?
There are people that are starting to reach out now. When during this whole process, it hasn't felt too alone, because I had his other survivors that were
Right. Hmm.
we kind of band together. And
Hmm.
um and it was hard to hear, like, on the podcast. When the podcast came out, they found a girl from 1997, and one that he swore didn't exist, under oath.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, one part of the story I left out was when we were being deposed to go um, testify for the hate crime trial. Wife number 4, she was deposed for the hate crime trial, and she actually admitted under oath that Jason was going to murder me at the Tulsa State Fair. And so
Wow.
I had that knowledge going into my deposition as well. So, uh,
Mm.
so he was good. He went through a lot of lengths to stop me from telling my story. Tried to take my kid, tried to take my job,
Mhm.
was plotting my death. And um
Mhm.
here's here's when right after he beat wife number 5 and he was being arrested in Iowa, somebody looked his house up on Zillow and pulled his house listing up. Okay. So, and this is in Iowa, which is like, I don't know, 3 states away. And they found, and the 4th picture online was his yard, and the picture of that sign that he had made with my face on it was in his yard in Iowa 4 years later. 4 years later.
Wow.
And
Oh,
he
that
also
is creepy.
I know, he also has it in his house too. So
Wow. Wow. Well, you have such tremendous courage and obviously a very strong sense of justice as well. And as hard as it may be for people to read or listen to your story, and there will be some that shake their head and say, well, it can't possibly be that bad. I want them to know it can be that bad. And for many women, it's even worse. You are one who
oh,
got away, and we need to be supporting women and believing women when they come forward talking about the abuse that they have suffered at the hands of men in their lives. And so, if in the last minute or so that we have, what advice would you give to a woman, maybe on the dating scene today?
I would say, um, if you see a red flag, freaking trust your gut. Do not,
Yes.
and you deserve so much amazingness, and don't overlook anyone who's being shitty at all.
Hmm.
Don't overlook anything shitty, because it's a sign of worse. And
Wow.
get out quick.
Powerful. Yes, that is excellent. Very, very wise advice. Karrah, I'm so glad that you could join me today. Thank you for sharing your story with me. I hope tons of people buy your book and listen to it and share it, and that it serves as a real warning for women today. I'm glad to know you, and thank you again for joining me on the podcast today.
I'm really grateful for you talking to me today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. Please take care.